Hello, I'm Yang Rui with Dialogue in Beijing. Unlike his predecessor, President Obama lists climate change and energy policy as top priorities on his agenda. But 8 years ago, few people were seriously talking about climate change in Washington, D.C. What has prompted President Obama to make such a fundamental change in the U.S. domestic and foreign policies? Why has the issue of climate change been put on top of the agenda in formulating the new China policy of the U.S. government in the new era? To take a closer look at the future of this most important and complicated bilateral relationship in the world, we are pleased to be joined here by Mr. Kenneth Lieberthal, a professor of political science and business administration at the University of Michigan and former senior director for Asia on the National Security Council of the Clinton administration. Before we start the interview, let's look at this report.
Comprehensive partnership with Indonesia.
U.S. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will meet with Chinese leaders during her first diplomatic trip to Asia this week. Talks are expected to include discussions on how China and the U.S. can work together to curb industrial emissions responsible for climate change. China and the United States are the world's top two greenhouse gas emitters, together accounting for more than 40% of annual emissions. During the 8-year Bush administration, the U.S. refused to ratify the Kyoto Protocol, the international treaty on climate change. Former U.S. President George W. Bush argued that the treaty's call for mandatory reductions of industrial emissions would harm the U.S. economy, while developing nations were exempt from reduction targets. China contends that the United States emitted the most greenhouse gases in the previous century, and carbon dioxide, the most important greenhouse gas, remains in the atmosphere for roughly 100 years. The total amount of emissions from China and the U.S. is roughly the same, but China's population of 1.3 billion is 4 times that of the United States. So on average, each American accounts for 4 times as many harmful emissions as each Chinese. U.S. President Barack Obama has pledged to reverse the resistance of his predecessor George W. Bush to act on climate change, sparking optimism that there could be a joint approach to the issue by China and the U.S.
Welcome to Dialogue, sir.
Thank you. Good to be here.
President Bush deserves credit for shaping a very good U.S.-China relationship, but does it mean that that relationship under the Bush administration has laid a solid groundwork for the new Obama administration in terms of solving all of the thorny issues and challenges that we are facing at this moment?
Well, I think you're right that President Bush and President Hu Jintao established a solid foundation for the U.S.-China relationship. Having said that, I think the biggest items on the U.S.-China agenda are now changing. All of the issues that we have been concerned with in recent years remain on the agenda and must be managed well. But in addition to those issues, we have 2 huge issues that will shape the relationship going forward. The first is the global economic crisis, and the second is the global climate change crisis. And I think both of these issues will move to the center of U.S.-China relations in the coming months, and how we handle those issues, the quality of our consultation, the extent to which we can cooperate, will play a major role in shaping the relationship going forward.
Ken, here is a concern